right here on WNRI 99.9 FM, 1380 on the AM dial. And of course, you can listen to us for free anywhere in the world, streaming at WNRI.com. No commercials, you just get to hear us live at WNRI.com. This show, we're here every Tuesday evening from 6 to 7 o'clock p.m. and we rebroadcast the show on Saturdays at 1 p.m. So if you can't catch the whole show tonight, you can catch it again on Saturday at 1 o'clock. I want to do a quick shout out to some of my sponsors. We greatly appreciate George Metz and G Metz Moving and Storage. Please check them out at gmetzmoving.com. That's G as in George, M as in Michael, E as in Edward, T as in Tom, Z as in Zebra, moving.com. You can price a move or schedule a move at their website. We also want to shout out to Anthony Betancourt and the crew at Compass Title and Escrow. They can handle residential and commercial closings for buyers and sellers of real estate. And of course, Vern Rainville. Vern Rainville is a public insurance adjuster licensed by the state of Rhode Island. So he works for you, the property owner, not, bold letters, not the insurance company. So sometimes, something happens, a calamity happens, you have a flood, heaven forbid, you have a fire, or a tree falls on the house, whatever it may be, shingles blow off. Sometimes you don't know what to do, what you're covered, what your insurance covers you for, how much you should accept, what's a reasonable amount. That's when you want to reach out to Vern Rainville, because he will get back to you within 24 hours. His phone number, 484-300-8495. That's 484-300-8495. He is a Rhode Island guy. He's located in Rhode Island. And like I said, he will get back in touch with you within 24 hours. But the first thing you have to do is give him a call at 484-300-8495. And even if you had a claim or an event that was 6, 12, 18 months ago, give him a call, because he might be able to help you with that, that eventuality, whatever the occurrence was. That's Vern Rainville, public insurance adjuster, licensed by the state of Rhode Island. Okay, this is a real estate show, so we're going to talk a little bit about real estate today. Okay, I always go to my trusty Mortgage News Daily website to share the rates for the week with you guys, and this is the standard that I use. It is not the best rate, not the worst rate. It's just something I use all the time to be consistent in quoting interest rates. Now, the rates that you may get from your lender, hopefully you're using a local lender, those rates may differ, may be higher or lower, because there are a lot of things that go into determining what rate you get. But the rates right now, the general rates for 30-year fixed rate, as of today, it's 6.85. 30-year FHA, 6.23. 30-year VA, 6.25. So, folks, these are higher than they were last week. And there are, a lot of different reasons why they may be higher, or a lot of opinions on that. But the fact is they're higher. What's also higher is the price of a house. Real estate, home values have been increasing. And this makes it challenging if you are looking to buy a home. And my word of warning or caution is, don't wait. If you can start the process of buying a home now, don't delay, because the longer you delay, you're just going to watch prices go up. And even if rates come down, your purchase price will be higher. But if rates stay where they are, which let's assume they do for the foreseeable future, your monthly payment is going to continue to increase significantly. Okay, if prices are going up 5, 10, 15% per year, as they have been in Rhode Island, it's getting expensive. Now, why prices going up, Joe? Is that the greedy realtors? Is that the greedy sellers? No, it's economics 101, folks. There's more demand than there is supply. Now, of course, you sell a house, if I'm working for the seller, I try to get them the highest price possible. But we can't go too high, because in the final analysis, most homes are purchased with a mortgage, so the bank is going to send out an appraiser. And the appraiser looks at a number of different things. One of the most significant is the value, the fair market value of similar homes that sold recently. So if you have a home that was sold for much more than fair market value, the appraisal won't come in which case the seller and the buyer have to come to a new arrangement, a new agreement on a price. So, that's where we are. That's why prices keep increasing every year. And one of the reasons they're increasing is because there are people who are transitioning from being renters, being tenants, and they want to become a homeowner. Okay? They're doing this by saving, working on their credit. So if you get a better credit score, you get a lower payment. Bringing in family members to help them. These are some different things that can be done to help you get into a home, because home ownership is the best and biggest creator of net worth that's out there. And it's a fantastic way for someone from a lower socioeconomic demographic, i.e. not making a lot of money, to participate in the American dream. Work hard, maybe bring in parents or children to help you qualify for the mortgage, and then you get a house that's big enough for everybody. Okay? And we're very fortunate in Rhode Island in that we have accessory dwelling units that are legally permissible, okay, ADUs. And we had Calyx Builds on a few weeks ago. They are expert in building accessory dwelling units. They're very experienced in that. So it makes a lot of sense if you're looking at a home and maybe you need to have a little more space so grandma and grandpa can move in or the kids can move back home, whatever it is. That's something you would want to consider. And I could certainly send you the guidelines, the legislation for that if you have any questions. But that being said, what I want to talk about tonight is tariffs. And if you have any thoughts or opinions and you would like to call in, please give us a call, 401-769-0600. If you're out of state, 1-800-949-9674. And we can talk about tariffs, because what impact, if any, do you think tariffs are going to have on the price of homes? Is it going to help or hurt buyers? Is it going to hurt buyers and help sellers? Is it going to hurt buyers and sellers? Is it going to help both of them? There are a lot of things. We'll look into some of them, but if you have an opinion that you'd like to share, it seems like there are a lot of experts on tariffs the past week or so. A lot of people are opining what should or should not be done, what is wrong and what is right. And, I try to do my part and just study and read, and I have my thoughts. But what I want to go and share with you tonight are some of the kind of the more, I guess, we can't say empirical because it hasn't happened yet. It's too new. But there are some empirical things that we can look to see what's going to be impacted and how it would be impacted by the tariffs. Excuse me. So some of the key impacts that we would want to look at are, construction costs, okay? New homes, you need materials. So where are these materials coming from? Okay, a lot of these building materials are imported. Some are imported from nearby, some are imported from far away. And this could add billions, that's with a B, to construction expenses, making new homes more costly. Okay, so now if you were budgeting, X $100 per square foot to build your 2,000 square foot home, and now let's say the tariffs kick in and now the price of everything goes up 3%, 4%. Well, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if you're talking about $300,000 in materials, now you're talking about a nice chunk of change. Okay, so that is something that could be challenging and problematic for people looking to build homes. Now, also housing affordability challenges, that could be something else that could, I emphasize could, be impacted because as these costs rise, first-time home buyers may struggle even more to afford homes. And this may, potentially, I don't think so, lead to a decline in home sales. I say that's not likely to happen, and that's anecdotal and in my professional opinion as well, because there are just so many more people who want to buy a home and who are qualified to buy a home than there are homes for sale. Okay, so there are a lot of people, like I said last week, I mean, there are 9 million adults between the age of 18 and 34 in this country that are living at home with family members. Those folks are slowly going to peel off and say, you know what, I want to go out and buy my own place. And you might say, well, maybe they'll go out and rent. Well, rents are so expensive. You bring in a roommate, you can't afford to buy a mortgage. Buy a house and pay a mortgage. Especially if you have, you want to have a garage or you have pets. Finding a rental unit that allows pets, bigger dogs, a lot of breed. Some people, they don't want to rent no matter what. So if you have one of the what are perceived by insurance companies to be aggressive dogs, German Shepherds, Doberman Pinschers, any of the terriers, pit bulls, things like that, a lot of landlords, they do not want to rent. Okay, so that will continue to push more people to become buyers from living at home with mom and dad and not becoming renters. Okay, so with tariffs coming on, if they start to increase the cost of homes, that could make it much more challenging for people who want to buy a home. Okay, another thing that we have is we want to look at potential delays in new housing developments. So if we have builders who are facing increased expenses, so their lumber costs are going up 10, 20, 30%, they may slow down or cancel projects, which would further tighten the supply. Now, some of this, if one of the factors that drove up the cost for a lot of materials was transportation costs, getting the material goods from point A to point B. So as the cost of fuel drops, and it's dropped significantly, those costs will start to come down or not continue to increase. Even if the actual cost of the material is higher, the transportation cost will decline. So if I own, a material supply store for housing goods, and it costs, there's an extra surcharge on every truckload of 5, 10, or 15%, and that goes away. Okay, if I don't have to pay that, now I can lower the cost of my sheetrock, my lumber, whatever it may be, doorknobs, etc. Okay, so that is something that may counter the potential increase in the cost of building a home from the tariffs. Okay, now we've seen a lot of craziness in the stock market. It's dropped thousands of points. This morning it was up, I think, 1,400 points, and then it dropped down, so it ended up being, down 300 points for the day. So there's a lot of uncertainty. And, I just want to point out, I learned a couple of interesting statistics. So it's like the top 10%, the top 10 wealthiest people or individuals or groups in this country, they control or own over 50% of the stocks that are out there. And then the next 40% control or own, I think it's another 30%. And then 1% of the population owns about 10% of the stocks out there. So when we see the stock market swing wildly like it is, and all of the headlines and new and printed media and on the news shows are talking about stock market dropped, 1,000 points or 1,500 points, or 2% or 3%, whatever the number is. That's a statement of fact. But in all honesty, if you talk to 10 people on the street, probably only one or two of them tops would be adversely impacted by that, because most people aren't in the stock market to that extent. Or if they are, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you're not going to need that money from your 401k or your IRA for a long time. So, shouldn't even be looking at what the stock market's doing anyway, because you're leaving everything in there until you turn the appropriate age to make that withdrawal. So these are, some things that the stock market has been really adversely impacted by tariffs, and a lot of it is because I think it's just fear. It's the disruption to what's going on. But I think as we start to, weather this storm of uncertainty, I think things are going to start to settle down as we get, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months out. I saw something on the news today. Over 60 countries have already come to the table and say they want to negotiate fair tariffs. So if that's the case, all right, that helps a lot. What are the goods that those folks make or sell? And then there are a lot of companies that are moving their production facilities back to the United States. So now that's something that is going to be very helpful, because these will be folks who are employed in jobs that pay good salaries. And another statistic is in the past 50 years, wages, even though productivity per hour of the American worker has gone up precipitously over the past 50 years, real wages have only increased 35%. So think about that, and that factors in, there are a lot of things that go into, factoring what real wages are, but they've only increased 35% in the past 50 years. So as we get more companies coming in and they're employing more people, we increase the percentage of the workforce that's working, because you can have really low unemployment rates, but if a statistically significant 2, 3, 4, 5% of the population just gave up looking for work, they're not factored in. But those folks may be able to go back to work if the right opportunity came along. Okay, so if you're not looking for work anymore and you just, I'm just going to retire, or I'm going to, live off my savings, you're not counted as not working. Okay, but so unemployment will be lower because most of the people, the percentage of people that are looking is very low. But if you are deciding you want to come back and start working, that will increase the percentage of workforce participation, which is something that we need to look at. And that number has dropped a noticeable amount over the past 10 or 15 years. If we start to increase that, what does that mean? So now someone who is at home, retired, semi-retired, living off savings, not contributing to the economy, now that person is going to go to work, earn a paycheck. So when they earn a paycheck, they're going to pay some taxes on their income. So that's going to help the government coffers. But they're also going to have more money to spend. So maybe they'll go out to more restaurants. Maybe, they'll go out and spend money on whatever you like, barber shops, or, getting fancy haircuts, or pedicures, manicures for the women. Spend more money on clothing. As opposed to when you're home and you're not earning money and you're retired or semi-retired, usually it's a more frugal mindset. So as more people start spending more money, this is going to really juice the economy. As more people start earning more money, okay, because I have a little coffee shop, or I have a little convenience store, and more people are spending money in my convenience store now because they stop at home on their way home from their new job, and instead of staying at home, they go to work, they come home, or they leave home and go to work, and they pick up a coffee and a newspaper, or whatever it may be. So now in my coffee shop I'm making more money, or in my convenience store I'm selling more stuff. So now I have more money that's coming in my coffers, my bank account, Now I can spend more for a house. So now the housing affordability question starts to mitigate, okay? Because house prices don't have to come down if houses are more affordable, because more people are making more money, are increasing the amount of money they're earning. So the effect of tariffs could be negative, and in the short term they very well may be, but long term, when we have more people that are working, I mean, I think the number's up to $3 trillion of that companies are investing in the United States over the next few years, and hundreds of thousands of new jobs are going to be created. And these are all kinds of jobs, from blue collar jobs to high tech jobs. And some of those high tech jobs, they're not PhD, master's degree jobs. It might be like programming jobs, coding jobs, where those are just regular people. Okay. Something else that may impact, an impact that may come from tariffs on housing, there may be some regional effects. So areas that are very reliant on imported materials, okay, we think, the West Coast, they are building lots of houses in Arizona, California, and they import a lot of building materials from Canada, a lot of the lumber, and the Midwest for Chinese steel. Okay, this is something that will hopefully be changing over the next few years, that will start making more steel in this country. But those areas may notice more of an impact. But I do want to put in, it's my understanding that lumber is not covered by the tariff on Canadian goods. So that will be grant us a little bit of a reprieve if that's the case. If that happens, we will be able to, mitigate the immediate shocks of, increases, and broader tariff policies could still create volatility in home prices, but probably the most significant material when you're building a home is lumber. Okay. But you will see increases in some of the materials, flooring materials. It may come in from Asia or Europe. Bathroom fixtures, kitchen fixtures, appliances. Of course, those come in from Europe and Asia. So those numbers will go up. But I think as far as like the percentage of the house that, which material you'd have to look at that is used the most, it would have to be lumber, because it's for everything. Okay. But that may be helpful if that biggest item, is not experiencing a lot of increase in price. Folks, if you have any questions or thoughts or opinions, 769-0600 or 1-800-949-2670, 9674, 1-800-949-9674, if you have any questions. Some exemptions will be helpful and will offset the other ones. I think with a lot of these, washing machines, dishwashers, dryers, microwaves, those are going to be hit pretty hard by the tariffs. And I guess if you extrapolate out and think about how a lot of the, if the prices do go up, maybe then some folks won't be able to afford a house or to afford to remodel the house. So maybe they'll decide to stay and rent a little bit longer. And if that happened, then that would further put more pressure on rental prices. And then rental prices would go up. That may happen, but, in some areas recently, rental prices have plateaued. They haven't continued to increase. So, so that's something that may happen, but I don't see that being as a really significant chance. Okay. Now, some ways that buyers and sellers can adapt to the changing housing market due to the disruptions that are being created by the tariffs. For buyers, look, if you are a buyer, you're out there looking, you're just starting to look, you want to meet with a local lender. Okay, I've had them on this show. We'll have more on this show. Jeff Gaccione from Embrace Home Loans, John Dolbeck from Primary Residential. We've Justin Conrad from North Point Bank, Dave Campignon from Bank 5. We have people at Main Street Home Loans, Joe Baptista from Anchor Finance, Navigant Credit Union. These are all great local lenders. If you go to them, lock in the rates early, because if we have potential inflationary pressures, securing a lower rate now could save thousands in the long run. Talk to your lender, your local lender, and ask them when the best time for you to lock in would benefit you most. And I say that because you may not want to lock in if you haven't looked at a house yet. Okay, so if you've been looking and you have an idea, and it kind of things typically warm up, you get a little more action and active, and as you start putting more offers in, as long as your realtor is doing a good job negotiating on your behalf, you should be able to get something accepted. If you have questions about how to do that, you can certainly reach out to me, your humble host, Joe Luca, 401-409-5030, 401-409-5030, and I'll answer any questions you have. Something else that buyers could do is, and a lot of folks have already started to do this, is consider a smaller, more affordable home. Maybe you wanted to get that 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath, 2-car garage, colonial, but you can't find anything in your price range. So maybe scale it back a little bit. Get a 3-bed, bath and a half with a 1 or 2-car garage. Or maybe change where you're looking. Maybe look in a little more areas that are a little bit more rural. Okay, there's not as much demand there, so many times you can find more opportunity. Something that's true to a point. A lot of people have been saying, well, I'm going to go look in Connecticut because houses are so much cheaper in Connecticut. Yeah, they are, but your property taxes are a lot higher. All right, folks, we have a caller, and I'm going to bear with me right here. Yeah. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling. How can I help you? Hi. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, what I always tell everyone, I say it on the show all the time, you cannot start the process too early, because even if you think you have great credit, maybe you could do something so you can get even better credit to get a lower rate, so then you can afford more house. And you absolutely have to have a pre-approval before you go start looking at houses. A lot of times, listing agents, their sellers are like, we don't want anyone coming in who doesn't have a pre-approval. So that's kind of a requirement sometimes for buyers. So I always tell my buyers, let's get it lined up, and then we can start looking, because we'll also know, what ballpark, what price range we need to be looking in. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. You sound like you have experience in the real estate business, buying and selling homes. Excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Now, sometimes you don't know what's on your credit score because sometimes there's erroneous information, and and people say, well, how do I clean it up? Well, I know years ago I had I had, there was a company in, I believe it was out of Colorado named Lexington Law.
Oh, I remember them. Yeah.
And they cleaned up everything. I had things on that wasn't mine. And I had to finally threaten one of the companies to either remove this within 30 days or else I'm gonna sue.
Wow.
Yeah, well, like I said, I wasn't playing games. You know, I said, look, this stuff is not mine. You know, I can prove it wasn't mine because I never did any banking with these. Because sometimes there's people with the same name, and things get misfiled.
Yeah, I know, and I actually found out several years ago. I live in Cumberland. There was someone else with the exact same name as me that lived in Cumberland, and I had no idea who it was, and they weren't related to me. It's like, who, in Little Rhode Island, go figure, you know?
You know, that's the way it goes. But people won't know it unless they start, looking into their own credit score first. You know, cleaning things up. You know, get rid of erroneous things. It all takes time. But when you go to a professional, you know, they're going to help you clean this up, you know, relatively. And the cost isn't bad either. It's nominal.
Yeah, true. That's very true.
It's a nominal fee. So I mean, it's when you're hunting for a home, and like I said, sometimes what takes place is that by having all your ducks in a row, being able to move in a moment's notice can mean the difference of getting a house or not.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. That's very true because I mean I've had situations where they want to go look at a house and it's a great house, but you know they haven't started the pre-approval process yet. And I said, look, we're not going to go look at it because even if you want to put an offer in on it, they're not going to accept it without a pre-approval. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and also too, there's you know as well as I know there's programs out there for home buyers. And, you know, the most common one is usually FHA. However,
Right.
you know, for example, North Smithfield, there is one even cheaper, USDA.
Yeah, no, exactly. If you're in a rural district, the USDA loan, which is a no money down loan, it's comparable to like a VA loan in that regard. That's a great program. But I wanted to throw in there too. Right now, Rhode Island Housing has a program. There's a $25,000 grant for first-time home buyers who are first-generation buyers. So if you're the first person in your family to ever purchase a home, you can qualify for a $25,000 grant, which is really significant. I have a buyer who's actually using that right now.
Well, that's a great new program. But
Yeah.
they also do have to. I also suggest that they should also look into various books on real estate. They need to, you know.
Oh yeah.
That is, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Both agree with that. And the more understanding you can realize of the real estate market, the better off you're going to be because you can ask more pointed questions.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I'd gone to a real estate seminar up in the Crown Plaza in Boston.
Okay.
And I used to read these books. The gentleman's name was Dean Graziosi.
Oh yeah, he's great.
And I used to read all his books, and I marked them all up, highlighted, underlined, whatnot. And going to the seminar, I'll never forget, there was two things that he taught me, and that's how I ended up getting my house. Is that it was a house I wanted, and the real estate person told these people that their house was sold. And this particular woman went to my church, and I said, oh, by the way, I said, what'd you sell your house for? And she told me the figure. And I said, fine. Did you sign a purchase and sales agreement? And she said, no. Then your house isn't sold. I offered her a few $1,000s more, and I dropped the check, call my real estate agent, dropped the check, to bind the property, and I got the house.
Excellent.
And so, I mean, sometimes and I mean, shame on the other real estate person for telling her client the house was sold as it wasn't, but I think the person was trying to be greedy to get both ends of the real estate commission.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. That does happen.
That's why it's important that whoever you have to represent you, is that you have to trust them, because this is the biggest purchase of your lifetime, usually a house.
That's right. That's right.
And so you need people with honesty and integrity, and to be able to answer, truthfully, the situation that you're in and what you're dealing with.
Very true.
Like I said, you have to self-educate yourself, and like I said, it's the first time I ever called your show, Joe, but I've been listening to your program for quite some time. I'd say probably at least 5 years.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
And so, I mean, it's, if I ever decided to sell my house, I would come and see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, question. So what do you think, what impact, if any, do you think that all of these talk with the tariffs is going to have on the housing market?
Well, put it like this. Suppliers can have a tendency to be greedy, and so the materials they have in their warehouses right now, they're gonna add like if it was a tariff was placed on it, and they're gonna pass that right along so they can maximize profit.
Okay. Yep.
So I mean, this is the way it is, and also. But you probably should talk to people like Paul Mainville and people in the roofing business.
Yeah. Yep.
People can tell you what they're up against, because I know a gentleman who put my roof on. He told me that in the spring the prices were going up, and so about maybe 2-3 years ago I was able to have my roof done in the middle of December when the temperature hit 60 and 65 degrees for 2 days, and they did my roof in my garage and. On a Wednesday and a Thursday and Friday, it rained cats and dogs.
Oh, wow. That's good thinking.
Everything was done. The guy squeezed me in. He had a small group of maybe 4 or 5 people who did the work. They did everything nice and clean and neat. You would never know they were there.
Yeah, that's the way it should be.
Thing you have to do, and that's what you have to do is when you look for people to do jobs, you have to have them, how can I phrase this? Be craftsmen and not hacks.
Yes. Yes.
Because he showed me pictures of the roof, and he said, "You're not going to believe this, Bob. The first part of your house, because my house is so like terraced a little bit, and so the first part they had the old-fashioned, looks like they were oak boards.
Yep.
Part of the roof, and the other one they had plywood. But whoever did the roof, or the past owner, was only like 3/8 plywood.
Oh.
A minimum was usually 3/4.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so what happened is I said, well, look, this is a no-brainer. Look, you have to double it,
Mm-hmm.
and so we can have maximum things. Because I'm not going to need another roof for another 30 years.
Right.
But nevertheless, is that at the time, a piece of plywood was like $85 a sheet.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I remember that.
But that's the way the market was at the time.
Yep. Yep.
And like I said, everything is contingent upon, a person gives you a price and, they have no controls over sudden, peaks and valleys of the market, or
Mhm.
like I said, with the tariffs, it's going to be difficult for people to honestly give you a good solid estimate.
Yep.
It's going to have to be, they can ballpark something normally, but they can only give you the prices as of right here, right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe next month it might be different. You don't know.
Yep. Yep.
That's the uncertainty of the marketplace, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. Now, uncertainty of the marketplace. What do you think? Several years ago, we had the really ridiculously low, wonderful low interest rates on mortgages that were, the only reason they were that low is because the government was printing money. What do you see as, and I know you probably don't have the crystal ball, like neither do I, but where do you think interest rates are going to settle out over the next few years? You've been around, it sounds like, through a couple of business cycles. Where do you think mortgage interest rates are going to settle out?
Again, because of the uncertainty, it all depends what the Fed's going to do. I think I don't think it's gonna come down much more than what it is now, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And the reason why I say that is that, right, right now the way things are going is that the government's in trouble with the trillions of dollars of debt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, and I don't want to get political, but the fact is that because of all that spending that Biden and company initiated,
Yeah.
you know, it was supposed to be a debt reduction, but it was a full-blown cash giveaway.
That's right.
And not only we're going to pay for it, and our children's going to pay for it,
That's
and our
right.
grandchildren are going to pay for this.
Yeah, exactly.
And because of very poor fiscal decisions,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I feel it's not going to take place until we can rid ourselves of the debt. I think the only president I can remember in history who was president and got rid of the debt of this country was Andrew Jackson.
Oh, that's a good point.
And so, I mean, he broke the back of the banks to gangsters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see that happening. You know, I mean, now we're into the global monetary situation.
Right.
Of this world. It was not like it was back then.
Mm-hmm.
However, but nevertheless, I just if we can shore up our debt, start living within budgets that the government make.
Yep.
Stay out of wars. You know.
Yeah,
if
that's.
possible.
I think that's a big thing. You know, we really have to try and stay out of wars because it's the cost in human life and dollars. You know, I mean, people come back and it's not if they're not, you know, injured, they have, you know, just a psychological trauma of having, you know, witnessed, you know, the things that you witness in war. That's you know, that there's a cost to that financially and culturally, and you know, so the wars have to end.
Let's understand one thing, Joe. Freedom isn't free.
Yeah.
Some people pay the price, and others pay the ultimate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the fact is that if we can, and also too is, you know, I was truly impressed with what Doge has done. You know, I don't care these people they're lunatics, but Elon Musk,
Yeah.
in my eyes, is a patriot.
Yeah.
And he's done a great service to the country to find all the fraud and corruption,
Yep.
even including our senator.
Yeah. Yeah, White House, exactly. He got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Yep.
$7 million, and his wife either was an
Yeah.
employee or an advisor. or
exactly.
consultant,
Yeah.
Making $300,000 for a non-profit.
Yep.
I said, I guess they pick up the trash at Bailey's Beach in Newport, and they fight the windmills that
Yeah.
that go in the ocean, right?
Right.
Oh, that's right. We have plenty of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, these are scams. This
Mhm.
is fraud against the American taxpayer.
Yeah.
And that's why Joe is that, you know, what he has uncovered in some of the nonsense
Mm-hmm.
we've given hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars away that does absolutely nothing for us, and also supporting, you know, nations who are not friendly to us, which to me,
Yeah.
I would give them a red stamp.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I totally agree.
So, but the whole thing is, you know, getting back to the as far as homeowners is that
Mm-hmm.
you have to self-educate yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe you can direct them to some periodicals or something to help enhance their understanding of the real estate market. And also, too, another thing they have to do is to understand where one should buy houses.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because
You mean geographically, like which areas? Mm-hmm.
their homework on school systems if they have children.
Right.
You know, it all falls into the mix of, you know, where you need to buy a house or where you live. I mean, how long you want to commute.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all these things.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's all different costs. There's
Yeah.
all different costs involved.
Yep.
And but the biggest thing is that, you know, you need to be able to let's say, I'll just throw out a figure. Let's say you qualify for a loan, let's say for $350,000.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the top of your run.
Yeah.
Smart person say, there's no way in heck I don't want to maximize myself out at 350.
Right.
I'm going to look at something maybe in the 270s, 280s.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
You have to be smart because something happens. You could be injured. You could be out of work, or what is it, husband or wife could be laid off or something. You're going to be able to have to weather the storm because you're making a 25 to 30 year commitment.
That's right.
And so, when all these things into fact, I said, yeah, would it be great? And look, I'd like to get a mansion right off the bat, but
Right.
I mean, that's not going to happen. It's like a person says, yeah, I want a brand new car, but can you afford the insurance? Can you afford the payments?
Yeah.
A lot of things you don't look into. It says, yeah, it's nice to own a car.
Mm-hmm.
There's more expenses that are involved. If it breaks down, can you afford the repairs on such a luxury automobile? I mean, to me is that you have to figure out. You have to have contingencies, and also too, you mentioned about having money put aside for a rainy day.
Exactly. Yeah, because one of the things that some folks are speculating is going to happen now is that all these people who bought a $500,000 home when interest rates were 2.5–3%, now they have that low interest rate, but that's a big house and needs have to start making big repairs, and they may not have the money put aside to make the big repairs on the house, put a new roof on, replace the driveway, or whatever it may be. And that those folks are going to have to go out and get a second mortgage or a home equity line, and could then get themselves in trouble with that. I haven't seen that in my, in Rhode Island yet. I mean, there were so few, very, very few homes that are on the foreclosure. I think it's maybe a dozen in the entire state. But yeah, you have to think about that when you buy a home. Like, okay, what is the cost of maintaining this home? If you buy a 4,000 square foot home and you get a really good price, well, you still have to maintain 4,000 square feet of home. That's a huge house. And, people sometimes don't think that way, it's just, you have to be very circumspect. And that's why people should work with an experienced realtor to give them suggestions. I mean, of course, I can't tell you what to spend your money on, but we can make suggestions.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, Joe, and that's why the things that you talk about on your program and the various people that you're associated with.
Mm-hmm.
So might be able to ask. I mean, I know Mr. Dolbeck very well.
Yep.
And you have some you have some fine people that you
Thank
deal
you.
with, and that's what you need.
Thank you.
Your integrity is placed on the line.
Yeah. Yep.
Nobody want. I mean, look, some things are going to happen in life we have no control over.
Right.
But the idea is that when you have people of honor and integrity, they can push through things that sometimes seem impossible, only
Mm-hmm.
because they have that level of expertise. And they've seen situations maybe similar to this over the years.
Very much so. Yep.
Somebody who's a relatively new realtor, they may forget about different things. I was telling you about the location of things.
Yep.
Years ago, when I was younger, I served in Rhode Island General Assembly, and we shut down all the hazardous waste dumps all around Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And so, North Smithfield, we had one with landfill resource recovery. Later, we had the old Stamina Mill sites in Forestdale.
Yep.
They had the Nike site. Then right over Landenborough, there was Fortune's landfill.
Yep.
So,
Oh yeah.
and so, I mean, Cumberland had Mills, and the Davis landfill up in Smithfield.
Yep.
A lot of these places all along, and so you have to know if you're buying your property, you don't want to be anywhere near these places.
Yeah, exactly. And I always tell people, try not to, when you're looking at a home, the three biggest enemies of a home are water, water, and water, whether it's liquid, gas, or solid form. And you don't want to have to battle water all the time. So try not to buy a home at the bottom of a hill. because you're always battling Mother Nature, and you battle Mother Nature as it is with, especially all the wind we've had this year and snow and sunlight and all those things that wear down your home. If you can choose something where you don't have to battle water, because water can be so destructive, it's unbelievable.
Oh, absolutely, and the soil erosion, and it can basically cause your house to collapse because of if it undermines your foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But and the other thing too, Joe, is that I know it was a beautiful piece of property in North Smithfield,
Mm-hmm.
and they built this gorgeous house on it.
Yeah.
But the problem was, it used to be the town landfill.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Gorgeous house.
Yeah.
Again, people don't, people need to do their homework.
Yeah.
I know one thing, I don't care how gorgeous it was here, is that, what's going to happen down the road? We don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So I remember years ago, people used to, all the stuff they used to throw into that landfill.
Yep.
I'm talking about paint and all that other kind of toxic material.
Yep.
So it's that's why it's so important for homeowners they need to do their homework.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's what they have to do in life.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
That's right.
And like I said, Joe, I've enjoyed your show all these years.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for calling. I really enjoyed talking to you. We'll have to get together for a coffee sometime, but I've got to wrap things up. We're coming up to the end of the show right now, but call again. I appreciate you calling. Thank you so much. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Okay, thank you very much to our caller. We had some great conversation there. And we're coming up to the end of the show. And another quick shout out to our sponsors, Compass Title and Escrow, Anthony Betancourt and Christine and Camille do an awesome job with buyers and sellers of residential and commercial real estate. GMETS Moving and Storage, the best move you'll ever make. Please check them out at their website, gmetsmoving.com. And of course, Vern Rainville, public insurance adjuster. He works for you, the property owner, not the insurance company. 484-300-8495. That's Vern Rainville, public insurance adjuster. Please stay tuned. After the Joe Luca Real Estate Show, we're going to have the news and weather, and then Rick Murney is going to be on with the Old Time Preaching Chapel. Great show to listen to. Has awesome bumper music, if I might say so. So please stay tuned for that. And I just want to do a quick announcement because I see this flyer right in front of me here. There is a mega meat raffle Sunday, April 27th, 2 until 5 p.m. And this is at St. Joseph's Veteran Association. It's only a $10 entry fee. Includes burgers, dogs, with all the fixings. And then there are 3 rounds of 15 meat choices each. Giant summer cooler, giant breakfast basket, 50-50, and 8 tickets for $5. So all proceeds go towards the new roof for the St. Joseph's Veterans Association. That's a mega meat raffle, not just any meat raffle, a mega meat raffle. That's April 27th at St. Joseph's Veterans Auditorium. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey guys, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.